Hello and welcome back to the Paid Forward Society, the podcast where we journey into the heart of leadership, speaking to trailblazing managers, entrepreneurs, coaches, veterans, and athletes who create empowered teams and deliver extraordinary results. I'm your host, Romain Jourdan, a technologist with more than 10 years of experience leading international teams. Today, we are privileged to host a leader who embodies the very essence of our podcast. Driving success, leading with empathy, purpose and care, and truly paying it forward. So welcome, Shannon.
Thank you. I love the mission of your podcast. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you. So Shannon, you are a renowned figure in economic development, finance, nonprofit fundraising, and importantly, cultivating healthy and vibrant world cultures. So currently you are leading the Oklahoma Hall of Fame as president and CEO, ensuring that the stories of Oklahoma and its people continue to inspire future generations. But your impact does not stop here. You are also the co-founder of We Women Lead, a nonprofit organization with a mission to build bridges and find common grounds, demonstrating the power of women and their tremendous potential to effect positive change. You are known for your passionate advocacy for women, and you are a respected authority on equity in the workplace, fostering healthy dialogue and setting ambitious yet achievable goals. Through your remarkable career, you have created multiple award-winning teams, fostering both personal engagement and financial growth. So today we'll dive into your experience and insights, and I'm really looking forward to our discussion. There are several topics that we wanted to discuss today. I'm interested in your journey into leadership and what is it to become a CEO as a woman. I think you could inspire a lot of people and a lot of women. So learning about your story. Obviously, you empower a lot of women to be in leadership positions and specifically with the leader board. So I think this would be very important topics to discuss, and how you started this activity, this nonprofit organization. You do a lot of speaking engagement at conferences and events. You talk about equity and allyship. So I'd love to understand from you how we men can be better allied to women and how we can empower them. And that it's not a zero-sum game. It's a game. It's something where everyone is going to win. So I think that's important to get that perspective from you. And the allies that played a role in your career would be great also to discuss.
That's awesome. For you? That sounds great.
All right. So welcome again on the show. And my first question to you would be, can you introduce yourself? Who are you, Shannon?
Well, you just introduced me pretty well, I would say. That's a very gracious introduction. I am a native fifth generation Oklahoman. My family was here before we were a state. And I am a mom of a 10-year-old girl who changed my life late in life. I'm a wife, and I am a CEO of a nonprofit that I am passionate about. I can't believe I get paid to forward the mission of the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. And I'm also the founder of Leaderboard. I'm the co-founder of We Women Lead. I am hopefully a good friend to, the people in my life, and family member, aunt to, I'm the favorite aunt. That's what they call me, the fave. So I think probably pre-COVID, I would have given you all my work credentials. But I think what came really clear to me through COVID is my family and my relationships, and having Zoom meetings with my girlfriends with wine, and, just talking with people that really have invested in my life and being a better friend. I think that would probably be the way to introduce me at this point.
All right. So favorite aunts and best friends.
For sure.
That's good. That's perfect. Thank you. So why don't we start with your journey in your career and how you progressed through leadership position?
Well, I actually started my career early in the hotel business. I was worked for small hotels here in Oklahoma while I was in college, and was a desk clerk. Did the things that most people do, worked at the desk and did night audit and did some of those things, and really liked the hotel business and the hospitality business. Got to meet athletes that would come to town and play, teams, and got to meet people that were coming to do conferences or horse shows, and really thought that was incredible. I had an opportunity to go into sales in a small hotel, and then worked my way up in, I would call it a small hotel, a select service brand is what we'd call it nowadays, and became the director. And then I ended up having the opportunity to open the city's first Four Diamond Hotel in our downtown area in over 30 years. We hadn't had a new hotel in over 30 years. And I got to be a part of that opening team. And that really changed my trajectory significantly in Oklahoma City and the state. Worked with John Q. Hammond's Hotels. Mr. Hammonds and his team hired me. That ended up leading me to be on pre-opening teams throughout the country. I got to open several other hotels while still working at this hotel. We opened another hotel. So the leadership was something that was a big part of that culture. It was a very male dominated industry at the top. And then there's women allowed to kind of be in sales and HR. Like that's kind of where there were, I don't remember a general manager that was a woman during my career. I'm trying to think, and I just can't think of any. And in Marriott, it was even, I would use the word worse, although I have a deep respect for Marriott and their core beliefs and their training, but it's a good old boys club for sure. And I learned a lot about what I didn't want to foster, but I had great general managers. I had great men that poured into my life and that set good examples about balance and family. And then the opportunity for the Oklahoma Hall of Fame came up, and I was fortunate that I did not really have any nonprofit experience, but I wanted to run for office at the time. And so the person who was the headhunter said, if you go take this job, then you'll have this statewide list in your Rolodex of people that will be able to write checks for your campaign. And so these are the power players. If you go do this thing for 4 years, help them open their museum, then you'll be set whenever you want to run for office. And so that was the impetus of this job. But I fell in love with our mission. Politics got ugly. It's funny. Politics was ugly 15 years ago. I would never do it now, but 15 years ago, I thought it was ugly. And what I realized through this is that you can have a lot of influence without putting your name on a ballot. You can drive policy and be an influencer without having to do that. And that's the way that I'm staying involved, but I'm not going to run for office. And I just fell in love with our mission. And so that's how I ended up at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. And I'm super proud of all the people we serve across the state through scholarships and publishing and programs, outreach. So,
can you elaborate a bit more about what is the Oklahoma Hall of Fame? I mean, I was not familiar with that before, and maybe because I'm not American. But
well, there's only 6 states that do a Hall of Fame. So we are the oldest. We've been doing it. We're in our 97th year. And so we are an organization that's been around, pre-Dust Bowl, World War I and World War II. So we've been around a long time, and our mission is to tell Oklahoma's story through its people, and we create pride. We foster education opportunities. And so the museum, I came on board in 2004 to help us open a museum, to establish kind of a headquarters and create this state-of-the-art facility that would allow us to kind of be a portrait gallery. Like if you've been to DC, the National Portrait Gallery, we have portraits of Hall of Famers. We have interactive exhibits. But truly our mission is to, there's a lot of, when I worked for Marriott, when I would go to DC or I'd go to places for conferences, they'd go, "Where are you from?" And I'd say, "Oh, I'm from Oklahoma." And they'd go, "Oh." You get the head tilt like, "Oh, okay." That's okay. There's geographic discrimination for sure when you're from the middle part of the country. But there's a great quality of life here. And the Oklahomans have been the first, the best, the only, in so many things that it wasn't cool to be from Oklahoma whenever I graduated high school. And I think being able to put faces on names, Texas does it better than anybody. Texas, if you put a Fort Worth mechanic in the room with a Dallas attorney, they're Texans. I mean, that's their thing, but they start at kindergarten and they go all the way through high school alongside all of their core subjects, talking about, Texans that have done all these great things. And that's part of what our mission is to do that, to give kids Oklahoma heroes to aspire to.
Perfect. All right. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So, can you share a bit more about your first experiences in leadership, and specifically in the hospitality business, as you pointed out? I mean, it was a very man-driven, business. So I'm sure you have great stories to share there.
Well, first of all, in the hotel business, there's just great stories because it's open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and people travel, and you just can't make it up. You can't make up some of the stuff that happens in a hotel. But I think being young in the hotel business, I learned really in my first job, I really learned what I didn't want to do. I had managers that would yell and scream, and I just knew there was a better way, right? And I felt like people were scared to go have a problem or have an issue. And the thing that I think set me apart early in my career that put me into a director seat before I probably was ready, or before I think I stepped up in one moment. I had a person I was the senior sales manager, and we did not have a director at the time. And she was probably 5 to 7 years older than me, and she had kids. And she walked in one day and said, I have to go, I've got a phone call. My stepson, they think, has been molesting my daughter. And she started telling me all this story. And I just said, you just need to go. Like, you don't need to say anything else. I don't know. I mean, I was 25 or 20. I'm like, that's like none of my, I have a degree in marketing, and like none of my Marriott books tell you how to handle this stuff. And so I was just like, you need to go take care of your family. Like, let us know how we can support you. Let us know what you need to do. I'll talk to the general manager. You just need to go. What's on your desk? What do I need to take care of? Who's expecting a call from you? What can I do? And so that was not it's not typically how we were treated in that moment, but I didn't know what else to say to her in that moment other than, you just need to go. So we had a long talk about that with HR and my general manager. And that ended up being the moment that they put me in leadership. I think because I was able to prioritize her, although interestingly enough, that wasn't really how they were operating. So I think that's that first moment whenever you have to lead with empathy, right? You have to say, none of this, you don't need to explain any of this to me. There's nothing that's your priority in that moment. Go take care of your family.
Yeah. But yet the environment, or HR and your general manager authorized that somewhere. I mean, you could have been in a situation where your management would have said, no, you should have never done that, and it's your fault. So
they did. Well, the initial conversation was, why did you, when is she coming back? And what is, like, they were asking all these questions. I'm like, I don't have any of that information, because literally what I said was she needed to go. And I believe that she will let us know. And if we don't hear from her in 48 hours, maybe we should call her. And again, I didn't have any training on that. Like, those are those crisis moments where you have to figure out, like, there's no, like, on the weekends when you're manager on duty and people don't show up to cook, like, I don't have experience in the kitchen, but I can tell you, I know how to cook eggs for the buffet because people don't show up. And those are those moments. It's like every hotel has this line at the bottom of the job description, which says duties otherwise assigned, which covers everything. So I can strip a hotel room in 20 minutes and get it ready for housekeeping to come in. I mean, you just have to do what you have to do. But in that particular moment, I don't regret it, but I didn't have any information because I didn't feel like it. So once we got through that, and I told them what she said and understood that what was the right answer. You need to call me back tonight, or when I put it back on to them to say, tell me how you would have done that differently. Ultimately, they were like, I think that you probably just made the right decision, and hopefully, and of course, you're relying on your employee to do the right thing in that moment. And they're doing the right thing by being with their family. So that ended up paying off for everybody. Because, of course, she's a great employee and she just needed space to breathe. She needed space to process herself what call she had just received and how she was going to handle that. So,
yeah. So that what put you into the director position? Okay, that's good. So how do you change that mindset? I mean, as soon as you are in this position of power where you have potentially the ability to change things, how do you foster that environment that would empower people to do better things and be empathetic and help each other?
Well, I
as you
think the
did?
first thing I did at that particular job, and I feel like I'm picking on that particular job, was I went in. We had a duty there that, for oddly, only the women had to do, which was we called it lounge lizard. So at the end of like 4:30 or so, most business travelers are having a cocktail right in the bar, and so they wanted the sales team, which was all women, to take turns at night and stay till like 7, going in and saying, "Hey, where do you stay, and how often are you in town?" Which in hindsight now, which again, at that age, I wasn't really thinking a lot about it, but you get hit on, right? So you're in there and you're asking men who are traveling, how often do you come to town and where do you stay? And it sends a different message than, even though you're saying, "Hi, I'm Shannon. I'm with the sales team. Do you know that Marriott has a reward program? And do you know can I buy you a drink?" It sounds like I'm hitting on them. It sounds like I'm opening a door. And my concern was, how come none of the men were doing it? Like, how come none of the general manager, like, how come the front office manager wasn't doing that? Like, we all have the same goal, which is to keep the hotel full, to make relationships and make sure people know we value their business. So the first thing I did was I asked my general manager, I said, "I'd like to incorporate men into the schedule, or I'd like to cancel the lounge lizard duty." And he said, "The what?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, we call it lounge lizard because we feel like we're just, crawling around the lounge, and it feels degrading as a woman. Now, if you believe this generates value," and I don't know that there is some value into knowing who your guests are and why they're in town and how often they travel, but I don't know that it's just our job to do that. And so we had a couple of weeks worth of conversations about that, and I said, "I just don't understand your resistance in putting men on the schedule. If we want to there were 3 other men that were in that kind of level of working with guests." And I was like, "I don't understand why that didn't happen." So that's the first thing that I did that ended up, we just got the duty canceled, which shows you how much I either pushed back the men gave to where he didn't want to fight with them, or it's just bizarre. It was a bizarre thing to me. So I think you have to live it, right? And I think there were just things that were worth not compromising on in those moments. And I certainly could go back and tell you times I did compromise, and I wish I could go back and change decisions I made. But there definitely were times where I stood up and said, "This is enough."
That's good. That's bold, and I'm sure it was very tough at that time, and I still believe it is still for a lot of women
Yeah,
in this industry, but or in
for
many
sure.
industries actually. Yeah. All right. So you are now a director of a hotel, and so does it mean that you are managing the full hotel,
No,
or
I was just in charge of the revenue team. So I was in charge of the 4
revenue
sales
team?
managers and the assistants that worked in that department. But it put me into the executive leadership team, which is what ended up, I didn't want to relocate out of Oklahoma at the time. And I don't know that I do right now, but at the time I was not interested in relocating, which is why whenever they opened the hotel downtown and they were building this brand new property, I knew I wanted to be a part of something like that. But I also wasn't interested in moving, to our Sawgrass Marriott property or to Bethesda, Maryland, or any place like that. So that's whenever I applied for that job and was fortunate to get that job, which put me in a much higher profile in the city. I think that's whenever the opportunity changed, because we hadn't had one in so long. So the news was very involved in that, and the mayor was our advocate in making all the things happen. And so I got on a couple of boards and started getting active in the community at a much higher level. So I was a very visible person in the community, and that changed frankly how I thought about myself, but it changed a lot about my life and what people expected of me, and what people were watching me at a level I didn't realize.
And were you the only woman in this?
I was the
board?
only woman at the executive table except for HR, because again, HR is women because we're nurturers. But I was the only woman in executive. And now when I would go to conferences, because of the size of our hotel and because of the revenue model that Mr. Hammonds had, I was often the only woman in the room. I was often, because we generated a lot of revenue for our size property, that I joked about it one time at a conference. I was with 6 general managers and myself with this. They were playing a game at a Marriott conference, and we had to get up and present our idea. But they said, whoever has the least experience at the table, then that's the person who presents, because it was all a bunch of men and they all have egos. So I think they figured that, that's just the easiest way. Instead of having to make somebody feel uncomfortable, that'll be the deal. Well, I didn't have the least experience, but because I was the woman, they made me go present our deal. And so I got up and said, I guess I have more experience by 4 years than the person who should be presenting this. But I guess being a John Q. Hammons, being a franchisee is like dog years. So I'm supposed to be presenting today. And so they all kind of laughed at me. And then I got some uncomfortable comments about that later. They called my property about that, but it felt uncomfortable to just be ignored about that in the moment. So there was lots of little bitty things.
So what did you learn through those experiences?
Oh, there were so many great experiences that property, things that you can't until you're trained, until you're living it. The Sultan of Brunei brought his son to be operated on in Oklahoma City at the D. McGee Institute, which is one of the best facilities in the country. And obviously because he could go anywhere in the world and he came here, and he brought 3 of his wives. So when the 11 days that they were on property, I did not sleep because my general manager, for whatever reason, was gone. I can't remember now for the life of me how come that happened, but I was their contact on the front end of this, and I'm a woman, which does not go well for that culture. And they brought me problems on a regular basis to solve. And there's a cultural probably disconnect, but also there was a gender disconnect. And every time they didn't like something I said, for example, they came and they said, we don't want anybody to know which hotel we're staying at, so we need you to keep it quiet. Do we need to have you all sign NDAs? And I said, we do this all the time. Cher was here last week. No offense, we can do this. We got this. I'll make sure my staff knows. So then they went and parked 14 bulletproof Mercedes around our hotel. And the media, of course, was waiting outside. Everybody was looking. And in Oklahoma City, I don't know what it's like where you live, but in Oklahoma City, we don't get bulletproof cars. If you've ever seen one, they have a look. And that doesn't happen here, right? They were brought in from DC, from their embassy. And so he was yelling at me saying how I had breached security. And I said, you just parked 14 bulletproof cars around this hotel. I mean, you may not think Oklahomans are very smart, but I'm telling you, it was a giveaway. You should have parked them over at the Westin, or you should have parked them, but we could have had a conversation about where you could have parked them, but it wasn't our fault. And then the next biggest issue was he wanted the United States Secret Service, in case this ever comes up in your travels, Rom, they only provide one detail for one spouse because that's our culture. So he brought 3 spouses. So I had a meeting with this general. They called me in. It was 11 o'clock at night. I rushed back to the hotel. They're like, we have a problem. Your Secret Service will only provide security for one of the Sultan's wives. And I was like, okay. And he said, but he's brought 3. So we need detail for each one. And I said, I have zero stroke with the United States Secret Service. I mean, I can call them and try to help them understand this. And he said, well, in our culture, for us to have another wife, we have to provide equal. So for every wife that we take on, we provide, the kids have to go to the same school. He was explaining this whole thing to me. And I'm just like, again, me calling the Secret Service means absolutely nothing because that is our country's, that's how we do business. So he's like, we'll pay for the money, but we can't, it'll cause him problems. And so there were those kind of things that you're just like, there's no training guide for that, right? Like there's no manual for how to deal with those moments. So again, in those moments, you just, and again, there were 2 times they said, if you don't do this, then the Sultan's going to buy the hotel and fire you. And I was like, he's going to have to buy the hotel to fire me because there is nothing I can do about this. I can't help you. So I learned a lot about myself and just about, and I think my team was looking for me. I think they expected a few times I was going to back down in some of those situations. And honestly, I just didn't have the ability to back down. I didn't have the stroke to move them to do those kind of things. But I think it's funny now when you run into people, and that's been 20 years ago, people will say, oh, I remember, do you remember this? Or do you remember that story? And I'm like, oh, I remember. But they remember how people do remember how you make them feel. And there's things people have said to me that have really made me feel like, even though that was a crazy time and crazy business, that I was able to, at least in a specific moment, help them through something. So
obviously, I mean, you have ownership clearly, and also a lot of backbone. I mean, to be able to not back down, as you said, and stay right in your feet and say no, we won't be able to do it. You have to escalate or whatever. Was this something that impacted the way you were seen by others, like men specifically? Because I think what I read from many women in leadership position is that whenever they demonstrate that they have backbone, they were seen as the difficult ones because they didn't want. So how did it impact you?
I mean, I certainly have experienced that. Like I said, I've had great men and women leaders in my career that have embraced that. And I had one general manager who I could not respect more. He was a servant leader, and he lived it. He didn't just talk it. And a couple of times I went in his office and I went, I am not doing this. This did not happen. And he just looked at me and he said, I mean, yeah, you got to do it. And I'm just like, oh, you're right. I'm going to do it. So there's moments whenever my arrogance or my hubris or my frustration with something was misplaced. Right. So I don't want to give you the impression every time that I have a moment of backbone that it was always the right one. But I think there were certainly people that did not enjoy working with me because especially in the middle part of our country here, there is certainly a way that we're all taught to behave, right? There's a way that we're taught to act. And I did not always fit that role very well. But I think there's good and bad in that, right? There's good is that obviously it allowed me to be in the rooms with people that are making decisions. The bad part is they didn't really always want to hear. By the time I got this job, I remember interviewing and I said, I knew enough about myself. And I remember meeting with Mr. Hammonds and Lonnie Funk, the president of the company. And they said, what do we need to know about you? And I said, I'm a great team player and I will be a good soldier, but you have to hear me. Like we have to have a conversation. So if I don't agree or I don't understand a policy, I need you to help me understand it. And if I don't agree, I need to still be able to share with you why I feel that way. And if that is what's best for the company, I will go deploy that with every effort I have. But I know myself well to know that I'm not going to be a good team player if you just tell me to go and don't ask questions and put my head down. Like I'm probably not the person that you're looking for this position. So I knew that enough by then.
Responded to it.
Yeah, I knew enough about myself by then that it wasn't going to be a good fit if that's what they wanted. So, and that worked. I mean, and they were a progressive. Honestly, it's funny. Mr. Hammonds was a very conservative guy, but he embraced women. And there were, of course, I say that all at a certain level. There weren't any general managers in that company that I remember. I shouldn't say that forever, but that I remember.
Okay. So, how did you empower other women at that time? I mean, you were in a position of power. You were, clearly demonstrating a lot of ownership and backbone, so how did you help other women doing that?
I will tell you that I think I was at that point in my career is probably not my best moment of being able to. I certainly hired women, and I certainly felt like there needed to be more women in decision-making roles, and I did that on my property level. But there still felt like there was a competition on the regional, and there still felt like there wasn't enough room for us, and that may have been in my head, or it may have been because I was in the room with all the guys who I know what they were saying. And I've been in the room whenever they've said, like, we have to have one, we got to have one of them. And I'm like, I'm right here. I hear you. And so I think I probably wasn't the best until I think this position that I'm in now has been the position where I've certainly elevated my team and told my team, you need to go be in leadership of Oklahoma City. You need to go get on this board. You need to go find where you want to be and let us help you do that. And we're going to make sure that you're in the front of the room presenting that next time the board comes, or we're going to make sure that you're on the slide deck that we show for success stories. I think being able to be more comfortable in my skin helped me understand that it's not pie, that there's room for all of us. And that frankly, I really became good at hiring people back in the hotel. Because what you learn quickly is in that type of environment, you can hire to your ego or you can hire to how things are going to get done. And I knew what my deficiencies were. I knew where I needed somebody that was going to be the details. I was the vision. I was the inspiration. I was the dreamer. I was the, let's get it all done. Let's go make it all happen. But I needed somebody that could complement me in the details and learn all the software and do all the spreadsheets and make sure the team was on board that way. And so I hired to my weaknesses, not my strengths. And that helped us be really successful for a long time. And the same thing, I think here, when I'm hiring, we're looking deeper into what we need so that we can be better. And it happens to be right now, my staff is predominantly female. Part of that's the nonprofit industry as a whole, but it is because we get a lot of shit done. We are, and I don't know that I've had several men that have reported to me, and there have been some that have stayed with me for 9 years. One guy ended up having to just move out of the state, which I get. But I've had to separate employment with several guys because they did not see me as the decision maker. And I had one guy who was our in-house counsel / accounting person. And he just said, I just want to talk to the board. I just need to talk. Basically, I want to talk to your bosses. And when I went and told them that, they were like, no, like, this isn't a discussion. What do you like? No. and one of the people that was on my board at the time was the former mayor of Tulsa. And she's a lawyer too. And she pulled me aside afterwards and she was like, do not ever entertain that conversation again. Next time somebody tells you and you're telling them you're putting them on notice and you've created a plan and you've already gone through personnel, we had a protocol in place. Like, I'd already dotted all the I's, and she's like, don't entertain this conversation if they want to come to the board. That's not how it works. And I was like, okay, check. So yeah, I think, I don't know that I think we're better together. And I think people that can work with us now realize that, my husband's a lawyer. Our family needs people to hire him. Like, I want people to hire him, but I also want people to know that if you're looking for an attorney in his part of the state, I think there should be women that pull up. I think there should be, and I think he will tell you that different VAs and different people that he works with, they have different ideas because they're different. And they come up with better solutions whenever there's more people at the table that have different voices and different backgrounds. And I think that's what we value at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame with my team. And I think that's just where we're going.
All right. I'm going to be
you have
challenging here, but you just said that most of your staff is female. So are we creating not another problem, but the same situation
in reverse?
On the other
side.
I
mean, that's certainly, people have joked about that, especially because I'm such an open advocate for women. And the reality is, we try to, every time we have an opening, we try to find a person of color, who a different gender, depending on what's the department is, what the predominance of that is. It just turns out that, I frankly just put an offer out. We have 3 men on our team right now. And I would say in a management and up role out of 10. And so, but I've offered positions to men who end up going somewhere else, or it's more money, or they just haven't elected to work there. So, I mean, we are intentional about hiring. After George Floyd, our company, we decided, my general manager, my chairman and I had a conversation, and we hired a diversity expert to come in, because we literally just said, look, we don't have any people of color on our current executive committee. And I have a couple of people that identify as of color on my staff, but I don't know that we're the voice of how to respond in these moments. And I want to make sure that we're doing things. And he agreed, and we agreed, and we hired somebody to come in, and they really helped us see how we have to talk to everybody. And we could say, oh, here's all the pictures of the kids that we're serving in the building. But if our application process for Hall of Fame, where we actually honor Oklahomans, doesn't speak to people that of different communities, and we're not really serving. We're telling them we want you to apply, but we're really telling them we're not going to put you in. So it just helped us evaluate all of our processes. So what I would tell you is, we are predominantly female. My chief engineer, the VP of building operations, is a engineer. She's a woman and a pilot, and she replaced a guy who was with me for 9 years. We interviewed, I think, 6 people. She was the only woman, but she's the one that honestly just impressed us. So it's interesting. I get that a lot, but it's just how it works out. We've had an opening last year for our education team. We had no men apply for our director of education. So it's on my radar. We know it. Trust me. We talk about it. We talk about it a lot.
Yeah. But I think your situation is rare. I mean, The problem is on the other side. I mean, in most industries, or at least in my industry, in in the tech world, I mean, we are still struggling to attract women and to
Right.
retain women. Also, I think we do have more and more women actually quitting the tech industry.
And what do you? I met with a friend who's trying to advocate for women in the tech industry the other day. Tell me why you believe women are leaving the tech industry. Why do you think so?
I believe there are many reasons. One is certainly the environment. There are many companies where it's probably not that. Uh, I don't know whether it's safe or not, but it's not an environment where women would strive because they would be seen as different than the regular bros, let's say, and they don't necessarily have the opportunities or or people to look after them. I think that's what I've seen. Um, maybe they're not given enough opportunities, probably, and you need examples. Also, I think role models, and we don't have a lot. I mean, we do have more and more, and I think Twitter at some point was a great way for women in tech or other communities, underrepresented communities like Black in tech, to be more visible at once. But this is probably not the best platform anymore. Clearly not for entertaining this type of messaging and also empowering communities. So I think another reason is the way social network work. I mean, if I look in my own network, I mean, I went through that epiphany when I had a lot of roles to open and to fill, and I could not see a lot of women applying to roles in my teams. So I spent a lot of time making sure that the wording and the style of the job description would be gender neutral and not necessarily leading to for a woman to say no, it's not for me or something like this. But actually, I realized that many people from underrepresented communities like Black in tech or women would not be aware of those opportunities. They would not find them. And one of the reasons is that I mean, for example, on LinkedIn, which is a professional social network, we were not connected. We were not. We were distant. So they would not see my messages. Same on Twitter, and I would not see them. So I had to be very intentional about finding people that I believe would have the skills and the talent to join the team. And then I engage conversation with them and say, hey, do you know about this? And in many cases, they have no clue at all about the roles that I was offering, or that those type of roles would exist actually. And yet, I mean, based on what I was seeing from what they were producing online or the quality of their work, I could clearly see that they could be successful. So there is definitely something here to challenge, and maybe we can discuss. Maybe it's a good segue towards the leader board to help surface those great profiles that we don't see in our networks, and that we can tap into to find new talents.
I mean, that's exactly the vision of Leaderboard. I mean, it's an online directory for women. It's just that simple. We just want to make it easy to do business with women. My daughter got a dental Barbie when she was 5, and she was so excited, not about the playing with the Barbie, but the business model. I thought, because I'm a business major, so in my mind, that's what I saw. Was she was thinking about the waiting room and how to make it better and how to make it get you out of the chair faster. And she was even talking about like when you pay, how you could get done. And I just was like, wow, that's awesome. I'm going to go find out how much it costs for her to go to dental school. Like, cause I thought that's ridiculous. I know, but I went online to find out how much my 5-year-old was going to cost us in her dental school. And the second article that popped up was that women dentists make 50% less per hour in chair time than men. And I was like, what? And then it turned into, I just went in this rabbit hole of that only 24% of partners in law firms are women. And whenever they do make partner, they still only make like 80 cents on the dollar, which I didn't understand, because if you're an equity partner, don't you get, I just didn't understand where it was going. And then it just sucked me in about all of the difference in pay. I've been fortunate that I've always made a good living and been paid very well. And so it's one of those things, again, whenever you walk around like this and you don't pay attention, especially here in Oklahoma. I mean, I'm sad to tell you, we're 51st for women in the country right now, even below the District of Columbia. We are 49th for insuring them, for incarcerating them. We're 48th. We just don't take care of women. And what I didn't realize, because I've always had health insurance, because I've been in a situation where I wasn't a part of those statistics, I just wasn't paying attention to what those statistics meant to my community and what it means to economic development, what it means to companies who go, if half of your population isn't thriving and isn't healthy, and, 1 in 4 women in Oklahoma are going to experience domestic violence in some time in their life. Like, those aren't good odds. Like, you wouldn't move here thinking, hey, that's a place I want to raise my kids. Right. And so it's 1 in 4. 30% are, we're number 3 in the country for women that are murdered by a single assailant, they knew, a romantic partner. So it's not a good, and I just didn't realize, I wish I had paid more attention to that when I was in my 30s and used more of that voice and that platform. But now, because of Mia, my 10-year-old, and because of realizing that when I went to go find a woman dentist, that's the rest of that story. Is I went to go, I'm like, I'm part of the problem. I have a male dentist. I have a male insurance agent. I'm going to go find a woman dentist. It's just not as easy as you think. And it should be, but oddly, what you realize is that the dental association serves all their members. They don't serve their members in a way to say, here are our Black members, here are our women members, here are our Latina. And I get that. They can't. But after George Floyd and after the Me Too movement, people, almost 80% of us now want to spend money with companies that align with our values. So we're going the extra mile to say, Home Depot or Lowe's, which one of those mirrors more of how I believe? And my, $200 in purchases may not move the needle, but if all of us had those conversations, I mean, look at the NFL, for example. The reason why they got rid of the mascots that they got rid of last year was not because, in my mind, those mascots have been there forever. It was simply because people said, finally, they said, I can't renew our sponsorship. I'm not buying the skybox again at the Redskins because our company has now said we have a D&I policy and we can't do that. It's all about the money. I mean, let's be honest, money changes everything. And so I want to create a solution where women could be found, because I'm also in a room with very powerful people all the time who say, oh yeah, I couldn't find a woman tax attorney, so we hired this guy again. And I'm like, aren't you a regent for one of our universities that has a law school? We don't have women tax attorney. We don't, I know too. It's just the idea that we all call who we know. Just like you said, and you were thinking about who I knew. I have openings in my network. How can I fill those? Because it's a little bit harder to go outside of your network. It's a little bit, you don't know them. You don't know the quality of work. You have to do a little bit more work, right? So that's how Leaderboard was born, because it just was hard for me to find a woman insurance agent. And again, those are things that you think, wait a minute, I get that in the mail. I get that. But whenever you really drill down to, I live in this area and I want to find somebody, it's just not as easy as it should be. And so that's why that was born. And it's become an advocacy tool as well. It's an opportunity for women who don't like to speak out, who aren't comfortable saying, oh, hey, Bob, I'd like to have that opportunity. And based on my experience, I think I could deliver on that next project. What it does, we elevate them on social media. We increase the platform, which of course helps the algorithm to help them get pushed up to the top. And maybe they appear in your search when you're looking for somebody then. And that's really what we try to do, is help make that happen for them.
Okay. So let's be practical. So one question first. Is the Leaderboard national wide? Or
not yet. We certainly have the opportunity to be, but obviously my footprint is here in Oklahoma, Kansas City, Northwest Arkansas, Dallas, Austin. So we're kind of in the Midwest right now. That's where our members are. That's kind of where it's just kind of starting out. And since I have a full-time job and I'm the CEO and I'm trying to be a mom to a 10-year-old and see my husband every now and then. It's just one of those things where it's kind of it's gotten more traction in the last 6 months to a year than it's ever had. And so I think we're having more events and we're having people recognize the value in it. And we've got a few companies that have come on as corporate partners to help us continue having those events, bringing women together. And the reality is people realize that women left after COVID, that a lot of women left the workplace. And there's a lot of really talented women who can write their own check and who can be a contributing part of your team if you want them to be, if you're open to it. And so being able to connect people with that type of resource has been a great value to some organizations within, the area that we serve right now.
All right. So if you are an employer and you are looking for talents in the Midwest, then they can, how does that work? I mean, is there a website where they can go and just say, okay, I need a tax attorney, and I will find a list of profiles that you have part of your group? Or
that's a great question. Yes, they can literally go to theleadherboard.com and they type in, I'm in Texas and I want a family law attorney. And then the ones that are there populate. We don't put more than 5 in each category. And we did some research on that in the very beginning of 10 is too many. 3 is not enough. 3 feels like that's not enough choices for some reason, but 5 feels like they still have choices, but it's not overwhelming. And so and then we do the vetting. So we make sure that they are in good standing with the Bar Association. If they're whoever their governing body is, we make sure they're in good, standing, and we make sure the Better Business Bureau doesn't have any, complaints that haven't been unanswered. That's an education process I had because my original thought process was no complaints. And then the Better Business Bureau joined Leaderboard and she said, no, people get complaints. It's just how do they respond to them and are they able to resolve them? Because everybody's got an email now and they all want to, that don't block people because of that, but find out how they respond and if they're able to be, if they resolve issues quickly. So that helped us kind of change the criteria in that regard, but that's it. So we have up to 5 people in different categories and we're still populating. So it's still I started it in the height of we had an ice storm that crippled Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, and Kansas, literally at the same time I started it. That was the week I started it, and nobody had power and so it's kind of gone up and down, but it's last September in 2022, we relaunched with a new model and, it's done much better.
So what type of, profiles do you have? Is it just, law related, like attorneys and, or tax lawyers, as you said, or do you have a broader range of profiles that you are?
That's a great question. It's really it's a woman. You can have to be a woman-owned business, or you have to have been in your profession. So we've got trainers. I've got people that are certified physical fitness trainers or Pilates. I've got people that are business consultants. They do consulting to if you're doing a business. I've got I forgot the level. There's some very detailed CPA type people that are on there. And then, doctors. I mean, obviously, if you're in a local area, the interesting thing is our mutual friend Allison helped me kind of reevaluate some of the ways that we were doing it, because Allison serves clients all over the world, right? And so she was like, I want to join Leaderboard. And I'm like, oh, I really haven't gotten to California yet. And she was like, I don't really care. And I went, oh, you know what? You're right. Because you are, you can serve anybody. And so we do have like the people that are consultants or that are web designers or that are virtual assistants. I'm trying to think of that. I have a ton. What I realize is I have a ton of people that, even though they may have a home base in a specific city, that's not necessarily where their clients are. So we kind of remodeled the website to help tell that story a little better.
Okay, interesting. So, is this only for contract-based engagements, as in a contractor, and say, okay, I'm going to engage you hire you as a consultant, or do you facilitate hiring for permanent positions at companies?
We're not an employment site. I mean, we are really just a directory. Yeah. So if people, it's really not, it's consumer based. I mean, our biggest attraction is consumer. So if you're looking for some of these services, then we want you to go there and find them. But we also do know employers are also trying to find top talent. And so they may be looking to bring a lawyer from somewhere over to their firm or hire an insurance person from somebody else's firm. And so that's certainly there. But we're not making that kind of connection in that regard as about come hire them. We're just saying women have a harder time pulling up in the algorithm. You've said it. It's a bizarre thing. If you type in the type of law my husband practices in that part of the state, I don't know why, but only men pop up. And I've asked him, are there not women? And he said, oh, no, yeah, there's a few. But for whatever reason, unless you type their name in, they don't pop up. They don't pull up. And so we're just trying to help women be seen more online. Women are uncomfortable. Like 64% of women would rather have a root canal than talk about themselves at a meeting. And so if you're not going to ask for the opportunity, but Bob will say, I'll take that, I'll do that, then you're not going to get the opportunity. And that's not an excuse. I mean, you have to step up for yourself and advocate for yourself. But if we can help create that online presence and help give you top of mind awareness and give you that, then I think it does help your ability to say, oh yeah, then yeah. Or somebody might say, hey, I saw this. Did you win this award? Yeah, I did. Because that way they don't have to say it. We're saying it for them and they can reshare it and say, thanks for the shout out. This is great. So.
And if you were, I mean, I'm curious to ask because obviously Allison has been working in the tech industry. So I wonder whether someone in a network would not be interested to scale that initiative that you have at the nation level, and maybe why not compete against LinkedIn to make an alternative that is more inclusive.
Well, I mean, I think the interesting thing is what also the difference is, again, I don't want to bore you with numbers because I've been told I get into that really deep, is 91% of women will do business with women if they know that it's woman owned or that there's a woman available. Like we are much different than men in that regard. And so what we're doing is creating this personality type. It's a little bit more, the LinkedIn has the headshot that everybody has, right? Like it's the same headshot no matter what you do. And it's, some of them are better than others, but they're pretty much this shot, right? And so what we've done is find a way. So I've got an attorney on our site right now who has the same headshot that all of us do on LinkedIn. But then whenever you go to her page on our site, she has a full sleeve of tattoos. So that's part of her story, right? And so if you're hiring an attorney and you see her on LinkedIn, she looks like every other attorney. I don't mean that bad. And but she looks, everything is the same, right? Other than you might go, oh, well, I went to the same college. Maybe I should hire her. Or, there's not a lot of ways to delineate them. The difference in what we do is try to build that personality with people who are like, oh, you're really into yoga, or you have dogs. I love dogs. Or I didn't know you were in that group that travels to play golf at certain places. So I think we're just trying to make connections because people hire from people. And we want to tell a little bit more of their story. And again, women aren't comfortable doing that up front. And so we're trying to give them a platform to do that.
Yeah, I can talk about my wife. She was back in France. She was a podiatrist, and I mean, her customers were very, very happy, and she was not getting a lot of business because she told me, I don't feel comfortable, reaching out to doctors and everyone and promote myself. It's and as a man, it was difficult to understand that, and I offer my help, but I can see why. I have a good example at home.
We're just wired different. She's not wrong. You're not wrong. It's just we're wired different into how we do things. And I'm not necessarily wired that way, but the reality is the majority of women are wired that way. And frankly, depending on where you go in certain parts of the country, here we're taught that we are supposed to be quiet. We don't talk about politics, and you just smile. Literally, I can't tell you how many times I've had a manager, somebody tell me, you just need to smile more. You just need to ask less questions. You just need to, there's a line in Hamilton where they say, talk less and smile more. And I'm like, oh my God, that was the whole first part of my career. But it's condescending whenever it's not something that they tell everyone,
Sure. So what else can you tell us about the leaderboard? I mean, do you have any data about, how many people were hired, or how does it help those women to get
Yeah,
more
I mean, we're in
business?
the process right now of doing that. We're quantifying it because, like I said, we'll be coming up on a year of the relaunch, and I'm having a new website built. So we're in the process of collecting that data of seeing how many did their annual salaries increase, because they provide us basic data on the front end to see if we can have that. And then I've gotten testimonials where people will tell me that, women. So there's a couple of different stages of your career, but there are some women that were in their 50s, like myself, who basically said, I had kind of decided I was at the end of my career and I was kind of just doing what I had to do. But after joining Leaderboard and meeting this group of people, like, I've updated my website and I'm talking more online to my customers, and they feel like I'm adding more value to them because I'm creating resources and things online that I never thought I would ever do. And so I think it's helping people kind of shift the paradigm at different parts of your career. And again, younger women are uncomfortable talking about themselves. They'll shoot out anything you want about their friends. They'll celebrate everybody else's success. So finding a way to give them those moments of, it's okay to talk about yourself, or it's okay to say you want more opportunity. I think it creates, and again, I've had somebody say it's an immediate conversation starter when you're going somewhere. Oh, hey, I saw that you have a Leaderboard sticker on your door. Tell me what that is. It's like, oh, I'm a part of a group that champions women. And so we really try to make sure that there are women considered for every opportunity. So I have that kind of data and those kind of little nice couple of sentences from lots of different people, but we're really working on the back end of the data. So I would love to update your listeners whenever I get that data back here in the next 6 weeks or so.
Oh yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I will definitely update the description of the episode with that. Do you think that younger women are facing the same challenges with being more visible? I mean, with the we said the Gen Z and some of the millennials. I mean, it's more common to expose yourself on Instagram and TikTok and other platforms. So, is this something which is limited to their own private life and what they like to do, or do you see that women in business are becoming more visible?
I think you made two very good points there. So one is, I do think women are very comfortable being online and socially, but I see a lot of them that are not using LinkedIn. But those are two audiences though, right? Those are two very different, like, your people that you work with don't need to see all the things. But I do think that they are not comfortable in some cases talking about themselves. But I will say that what's interesting about this generation is, I'm super impressed with with the way they say, like, there's a boundary. Like, I had somebody, we offered an increase and a salary increase and a title change, right? And literally they were like, thank you for this opportunity. I'm going to think about it. And I was like,
What?
I mean, I don't understand, because Shannon at 25 would have gone, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky to be here. I'm so lucky to be in this room. But to her credit, she said, like, I want to see what this is, and if are there different job descriptions? Because we changed the job description, so we were adding responsibility, we were adding money, but she was like, is it enough? And good for her. Like, I went back to my office and I told my VP, I go, good for her. Like, that's and she was like, what are we going to do? And I'm like, I guess we're going to wait. Like, we're going to see what she says. And so I think that's a very one of the women that we've hired told us that she was working part-time somewhere else, and the CEO of that organization was like watching somebody, like, they had skipped dinner and they were, working, they were taking tickets and doing all these things at an event. And they were like, oh, it's okay. I haven't eaten today, but I'm just trying to get all these things done. And they were like, okay, you'll be okay. And the person who works with us went, that's not okay. That's not okay. Like, can you what can we do to help her get away from this desk for a minute to go eat? She's not going to eat ice cream from the truck outside for dinner while she's taking tickets and while she's giving people their checks. Why don't you so this is my 24-year-old person who's like, no. And so she told me that story and I was like, I'm so proud of you. And she was like, that's just not the environment we have here. Like, I would think about if that were you or if that were us, somebody would go, oh my gosh, it's 7:00 and you haven't eaten anything all day. You haven't done anything. And you're doing all these. Okay, you go do this. We would pitch in and go, that's not a good thing. And so I think the fact that she could call him out at 24, because I don't know that I would have done that, right? Like, I don't know that I would have said, that's toxic. That's not a good thing. So I think this generation is more comfortable with boundaries. I think they're more comfortable quitting. I think they're more comfortable walking away from conflict or walking away from, I won't do it. I'll just do it. I'll go somewhere else, which causes you time, right? So the things that allow you to build influence is time in position. And I'm not saying that you should put up with bad situations, but whenever you have time in a position, that's whenever you get the training and you get to grow and you get to do the things that they invest in you in. And so it's hard. There's, if there's a reasonable way to move forward, having those conversations with people. Again, we were not ready to have somebody tell us, not that it was bad, have somebody tell us, I'll think about this. This is so great. Thank you. It didn't change my opinion about her. It didn't change anything. It made me think good for her. And and it made me reevaluate. We need to not assume everybody's just going to take what we give them. So it was a good kind of a reflection.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, and I think I discussed that with another guest on it was Chris Howard. She was telling me. I mean, we were discussing about the fact that some people are fine with their job. They don't need extra responsibilities or they like what they do, and they want to become better at what they do, but necessarily are not looking for other opportunities. And because there's a price to pay, of course, whenever you have more responsibilities, you have more duties, you have more, and we should be fine with that. We should normalize also the fact that if you are not demonstrating hunger to progress and to take other position, we should be fine with that as leaders.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's back in the hotel days, what I heard was, if somebody was only working 50 or 60 hours a week, the general manager would come in and go, "I only have you from here to here. I don't have you here. Like, I want to have you here." And I'm like, even then I was like, what? Like, they have kids at home. They can't just like not go home, right? But it's okay if you've got somebody from here to here. If you've got them here for 8 hours and they're doing their job, sometimes that's what people have to do. And I think, to me, what I look back on now, I have to take that inward of, if somebody has the capacity to have more fulfillment at work, to have more responsibility or opportunity, what are we doing wrong that we're not harnessing that? If we are watching somebody clock in and clock out, that serves on community boards, or that volunteers at their church, or that is doing all those other things, I'm like, they have capacity and they clearly have connection whenever they've bought into a mission. How are we missed that? What are we doing that where they don't understand what we do? We're not deploying them in the best way.
Yeah, I mean, there's that, of course, but some people are looking for that balance, that healthy balance between their job, which is okay, and they like it, and they are performing well, and everything else that they have to do. I mean, taking care of their kids and maybe their parents sometimes, and the partners and so on, and church activities and other stuff. So it's not always about us, right, and the company.
You're right. You're right. It is. That's the thing, is it's like being able to just say, this is okay. Like, this is, if you will be here and give us your best from these hours and do these things and handle these projects, we're lucky to have you. We're fortunate to have you. And that's, you're exactly right. It is about capacity and understanding that I think I would have been a healthier person, much younger. I probably would have been more balanced. I would have been a better friend. I would have been a lot better. When I was telling you, there was a time in my life that I probably wasn't the best. I mean, I certainly look back at those moments where you're like, you don't want to be judged. Like, do you watch Ted Lasso ever? Do you ever see Ted Lasso? So there's so many like those little lessons in there, right? And it's like, I don't want to be judged by some of the things I said in opening the hotel because I worked all the time, and I was not an example of how you want to live your life. I was working 80, 90 hours a week. And it wasn't good. So that means I wasn't sleeping right. That means I wasn't, like, all the things, right? So I think having balance and having the ability to say my family comes first, or I'm going to say no today. It doesn't matter who's checking in the hotel, or it doesn't matter who's, you know, I think this generation will do a better job of that. My 10-year-old says all the time, I don't care how much money I make. I'm not going to not be happy. And of course, she has no concept of all of that. It's easy to say that when you're 10 and somebody else is writing all the checks. But I do appreciate the fact that she's acknowledging, look, I don't want to be in a situation where you're just miserable. I don't want to do that. And they see, I think every generation gets better, right? They see things differently. Hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, indeed. All right, switching gears a bit. I mean, let's talk about your speaking engagement at conferences and events, and how you are advocating about equity and allyship.
Yeah, I've been really fortunate. I've been doing more speaking at events and conferences because I think people are understanding more that it's not a woman, hear me roar type thing. It's about equity and it's about how we're better together. And I share a lot of statistics about, honestly, if I could help your company have 10 times more profit, and you probably already have the resource at your disposal, would that be of interest to you? Of course. Who's going to tell me no to that? Because I'm not talking about revenue, I'm talking about profit. And the answer is the companies where at least 30% of the women are in leadership, meaning they're like at a decision-making executive level, at least 30% have 10 times greater profit. That just amplifies what I said earlier, which is we're better together. It's not that women are better than men. We see things differently. And so what are we missing by not having people of color in the room, or by not having a man in the room? Like we talked about what are we missing by not having all those voices at the table? And if you look at companies that do it really well, that are successful, they have women at the table. And they have women in leadership, and they have men in leadership. It's not anti. And so I've been doing a lot more speaking, talking about how men can be good partners, and it's not in the threatening way. Hopefully it's not received that way anyway, that we can work together. And I also think it's a tough time for men, right? Because they don't know what to say sometimes. They don't know what to do. They don't know how to ask the question without it being seen as confrontational or as, inappropriate. And I was talking to a woman today, a person of color who's doing something for us at Leaderboard. And she said, I prefaced a comment. I said, I don't want to be political, but this is what I said. And she said, Shannon, you just said this. I don't want to be political. I'm Black. Like, that's not political. Like, I didn't choose, like, my kids are Black. It's not political. Like, these are not political things. And it's like, I had to step back from it and go, that's exactly right. Like, it's not politics. This is just how she was born. Right. So it's just an interesting thing. We all have a bias. We all see things in a certain frame based on where we're from. And I think helping men and women work together in the workforce, and creating environments, creating teams, you say that in your podcast, creating successful, high-performing teams is a part of what I've been talking about. And I love doing it.
So can you give us some pieces of advice on how to create and foster those,
yeah, I mean, I think finding mentors and sponsors, like I said, I have had people in my career that I wouldn't be where I am if John King Hammond's a man, an older, like probably 70-year-old white man didn't hire me. And frankly, I didn't have the experience. I was the outlier. I didn't work for Marriott Corporation. I didn't I hadn't opened hotels of that size before. I hadn't worked for a Four Diamond before. But I had a lot of passion and a lot of drive, and I was committed to this community. And he took a chance on me because I was, again, not probably the top person for the job. And that changed my life. And the person who hired me for the job I have now, Clay Bennett, I'd never worked for a nonprofit. And frankly, he and I were on different sides of a tax issue. And we kind of sparred in the paper a little bit about a tax that I felt like was regressive, and he doesn't. And I still feel like it is, but it doesn't matter. But he took a chance on me to run this organization because he knew I was a proud Oklahoman. And that was what was more important to him than you can teach a lot of things, right? You can't teach everything. And so I think finding people in your career that you can say, even if they're not even in your field, that you can say, hey, can we have coffee once a quarter? And I really love that acquisition that you guys did. I'd like to learn more about what made you see that whenever nobody else did, or, you have a lot of women in your organization. I'd like to know how they succeed. How can I be better? men and women, I think is a piece of advice I give is find people that you see. And I also think we have to give women a chance. Like one of the things that drives me crazy is I'll hear this all the time. When do you think we didn't put her in that job because we don't think she's ready. When is she going to be? I wasn't ready to open that hotel. I worked in my mind, I thought I was, but you have to give people a chance, right? And they give men a chance because there's potential. I see potential in him. She doesn't have the experience. It's the same thing. Either they have potential because they don't have experience, or they have potential because they don't have experience. But over here, it's seen as, so I think it's put women in decision-making roles. That's how things are going to change, I think, for everybody in a positive way. So, and I would say also making sure that whenever, and it takes the NFL, I had the chance to go to their champions breakfast at the draft this year in Kansas City, the NFL draft. And they talked about, they have a combine for women coaches. And they were talking about equity and how it's changed. 49% of the employees at the NFL are women, and they are people of color.
Oh.
And they were deliberate about it. And they said, it's painful. It takes time. And managers fought them at the beginning. But whenever there's an opening, they always interview a man, a woman, and a person of color, period. If they don't have anybody apply, they can't open the interviews. They have to go find people that are talented. And they go, there's lots of frustration about that. But they said, we can name a handful of people that have been with us now for a decade because we had to go back to the drawing board and seek out talent. It's not about filling a quota. And that's the other thing I hear a lot of is, oh, you just need to check a box. There are talented women tax attorneys. There are talented, men, nurses. There are talented in it doesn't matter their gender or their color of their skin it's just a part of their story, right? It doesn't mean they don't have the skill set. And if you don't have an environment where they're going to want to apply, then you have to find a way to tell them that you are interested in changing your culture. So those are my 3 quick top tips.
Perfect. Thank you. How can we hire you? I mean, if someone is interested in having you presenting,
you can go to the Leaderboard website at theleaderboard.com, or you can email us at info@theleaderboard.com. And that's typically how either one of those 2 ways people get a hold of me, and we find a way to figure out on the calendar if we can make it all work.
Okay. And you would present in the US?
I mean, I've presented throughout the US, but I haven't been asked to travel abroad, but I'd be happy to travel abroad and talk. If somebody wants to fly me somewhere to talk on a beach, I'd be thrilled to go to the Bahamas and talk about equity. But yeah, I don't have any barriers on that.
All right, cool. So call to action for listeners if you want to offer a nice trip to Shannon, and have her speak to inspire women and everyone actually to be better allies and work together and recognize the power of diversity and equity. Everyone will win.
I like it.
Perfect. Okay, so we are getting towards the end of the episode. So how do you keep learning and growing as a leader?
I read in podcasts like this, really taking the time that I have that's downtime and making sure that I can get new sources of information or hear, again, even just joking. I think whenever you I think at my age, just even watching Ted Lasso makes you go, okay, that like rings true, right? You hear those lessons in that. I have a coach. I have a great coach. I have great friends like Allison. We have calls with our Cornell class, and the 8 women that started We Women Lead. We have hard conversations. That's why we started the group, is we wanted to build bridges and be able to say things that we didn't understand and recognize that we want to be better. And so we challenge ourselves by going to a mosque or by, doing things that are going to put us out of our comfort zone for the true benefit of understanding. So I think it's, I have great friends that we have hard conversations. Who you surround yourself with is a big determining part of how you grow, or if you grow, I think.
Agree. Are you intentional about taking some time off now to recharge and think? And because I feel that, what you described is that you were in a speed lane in your career, and you were really focused, and you were putting 80 to 90 hours a week. So So it's tough to recognize what's going on around you and grow as well. I mean, having the time to grow and just to enjoy. So is that something that you do now?
I need to be
And how do
better
you do it?
about that. I mean, I just had my coach call today, she gave me we had a little test and I failed it. So I've got to work on finding a hobby for myself, doing something where I'm not thinking, I'm not working on a podcast, I'm not trying to grow because I think ultimately my mind just automatically goes there. And I need to do something for myself like that, where I just check out and, go. I'm a Zumba instructor, but just go take a class or go do kickboxing and just kind of check out for a while. And we play pickleball, I play golf, but I haven't done it in a while. Just go and put it on my calendar to make time for that. I've got to do a better job of that.
Yeah. Same for me.
It's hard.
Yeah, it's hard. But I am thankful for my wife to be a good guardrail and say, hey, you have not done sport in a while. You should have a run or something like this.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah. Do you have a book to recommend? Something that you found so good that you would love for that?
I do recommend this book to everyone. It is Everything is Figure Outable. And that word is hilarious to me, but it's from Marie Forleo. And she talks about, I think at my age, there's a lot of things that I have impose barriers on myself with technology or things I'm afraid to do, or I can't do that now. And I remember hearing people say that when I was in my 20s and 30s and go, wow, that's ridiculous. But I am saying those things now. And she talks about how her mom, they didn't have much money, but her mom totally took apart this radio. And she was like, what are you doing? She's like, I'm going to figure it out. She's like, how are it's like, everything is figure outable. Everything you can reverse engineer your way into a conversation, into how to run a podcast, how am I doing this? It's like, and thank God for Google and YouTube. My 10-year-old thinks everything happens on YouTube. I don't even know if she'll go to college because I think she just thinks, why would I do that? Because it's all right here. And so it's amazing what information is available. So people who don't know or who can't find something aren't looking. I feel like they're not trying too hard. So yeah, I think that book reminds me all the time about, there's all these examples in this book of the things that were hard, that were things that wouldn't have made sense or that most people would push back on, but it's figure outable.
That's great. I'm going to put that on my list. Yeah, I like that. All right. And what other leaders should I interview next?
I mean, I think you should interview Gen V and Jennifer Thomas with Voice First World. They're my coach. When I said I have a coach, I had my coaching call today with them. And my daughter calls them the Gens. They have a podcast. And they empower, they just got back from teaching in Malaysia. They teach men and women how to show up, how to have a presence. They just spoke to an international group of engineers, which, as you can imagine, probably is not the most fun group, or not they're super smart, right? But it's like how to share your message in a way that translates to people that aren't an engineer. So they're great. Well, there you go. There you go. You need to know them. I would love to introduce you to the Gens. I think they're awesome. I think you would enjoy getting to know them.
Oh, perfect. That sounds good. Look, Shannon, we are at the end of the episode. So thank you for everything. Thank you for sharing your story. I do believe it would be very inspiring for many people and hopefully women as well. And looking forward to getting your data maybe in 6 weeks from now and sharing that with the community. And thanks again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love what you're doing with your podcast. So I'd love to stay in touch with you too.
Thank you, Shannon. Bye-bye. You stayed until the end. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Pay It Forward Society. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe and share it with at least 2 people who would benefit from this discussion. Your support helps me reach more people and make a greater impact. You can also help me get discovered by leaving a 5-star rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. I appreciate your support and look forward to continuing this journey with you. Bye.